Brilliant to see you back, sir.
What a pleasure. What a pleasure, Amit, to be
Jai
with you
Hind.
once again.
Jai Hind, sir.
Jai Hind, Jai Hind.
11:30 Australia time. So Indo-Australia,
11:30 Australia.
World Navy Day. So the former admiral, the real maracker of the 21st century, Admiral Robin K. Dhawan, somebody who has been really a big encouragement for all of us in the Vision 75 series to celebrate 75 years of India's independence and glorious past. But yesterday, when I saw Marakkar, the lion of the Arabian Seas, I knew that I will be very lucky if I can get on board today and get on hold today from his excruciatingly traveling schedules, Admiral Dhawan, for gracing this occasion on the Navy Day to take us through not only 75 years but also 500 years or more of India's rich naval history, which I got sensitized to yesterday itself. And Mr. Dhawan, you know, Navy, the role of Navy and the maritime security, the growth of Navy from being a buyer's Navy to a self-reliant Navy, producing Navy. This is the kind of initiatives, this is the kind of developments that have happened, and this is what we need to take it forward. Right from the days when people like Kunjali had got India independent from the clutches of Portuguese invasions to the various wars that you people have fought for the country, including the Yemen extradition, wherein you were an integral part along with General V.K. Singh in 2015. Those kind of episodes have a huge footprint on India's independent history and independence history. Take us through the entire lovely historical backdrop of this Navy. Being the chief of the naval staff of the Indian Navy, you are the best person to speak on this. Over to you, sir. Would like to hear from Admiral R. Dhawan. Happy Navy Day, sir. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Amit. It is indeed a privilege for me to be a part of this event once again. And on Navy Day 2021, and today we will be talking about the historical perspective, the maritime heritage. As you're all aware, and as you mentioned, India has a glorious maritime heritage spanning over 5,000 years. Indus Valley civilization, which existed in the western part of the country, dates back to 3,300 BCE. Even today, in our country, we have a dry dock at Lothal, which dates back to 2,200 BCE. And it is from these small ports that ancient mariners in India sailed off to distant lands in Mesopotamia, ancient Egypt, and east coast of Africa. On the east coast of India, we had the seafaring kingdom of the Kalingas, and the Bay of Bengal, as we know today, was then called the Sea of Kalinga. And we had the other seafaring kingdoms of the Cholas, the Pandyas, the Cheras, who sailed off to distant lands and distant countries in Southeast Asia. And even today, we can see glimpses of India's glorious maritime heritage in all these countries. Around the 15th century, India was one of the richest countries in the world. And we actually lost our supremacy because of our sea blindness and neglect of the maritime security of our waters. And this led to the arrival of the European powers. And the first to arrive was the Portuguese sailor Vasco da Gama, who landed on the shores of Calicut on 20th of May, 1498. And that is where your part, the story which you mentioned earlier, begins. Because when Vasco da Gama arrived in Calicut, Calicut was then ruled by the Zamorins of Calicut. And the Zamorins of Calicut Calicut had their chieftains or the naval admirals, which were the Kunjali Marakar. It was actually four generations of the Kunjali Marakar 1, 2, 3, and 4, with Kunjali Marakar 4 actually giving up his life and dying in 1600. So they offered a great resistance to the Portuguese, particularly Vasco da Gama and his team, because they were okay in trading, but they did not want to pay taxes and they wanted to do things their way, which was resisted by the Zamorin's and particularly the Kunjali Marakars. And there were many, many battles. And while the Zamorins or indeed the Marakars did not have the maritime capability in terms of the ships and the gunpowder, they had good acumen and they had their tactics, the hit and run tactics which they deployed and actually put in a lot of pressure on the Portuguese in a series of battles which took place over decades. And over a period of time, the Portuguese actually shifted out of Calicut and moved northwards, where they had to Goa, where they had actually taken over from the Vijayanagar Empire. So this is a great, great story, and very little is known about the Zamorins of Calicut, and particularly the admirals, the Kunjali Marakars, four generations of them who fought. And there was this famous battle which was there in 1600, and it is also called one of the major battles which led towards the independence. But I want to shift focus now that around the same time, we had the Marathas, which were actually gaining prominence. And Chhatrapati Shivaji, as you're all aware, was a great strategist, he was a great soldier, but he was also a great admiral. It is actually said that the foundation of what became, the maritime power or the navy later on was actually established by Chhatrapati Shivaji. And this was in 1654 when he realized that he had the Portuguese who were already on the doorstep and out at sea. There were also the Siddhis. The Siddhis were actually the Ethiopian mercenaries who were siding with the Mughal Empire at that point in time. And they had their forts in Janjira. So Chhatrapati Shivaji actually established or started establishing or setting up the navy way back in 1654. In 1664, 10 years later, the navy had been established, and there was a famous Battle of Surat, in which, we talk about joint warfare, Army, Navy, Air Force, but Battle of Surat, they actually had a combined battle of a land battle and a sea battle, which is a very, very important turning point in the maritime history of India. In the height of Shivaji's empire, he had nearly 200 ships. And they were not only fighting the Portuguese, they were then the Mughals through the Siddhis, because the Siddhis were backing the Mughals, and later the British Empire itself. And one of the famous battles, which was there sometime when they actually took over there's an island off Bombay called Kanderi Island. And that was taken over by the Marathas and particularly by Chhatrapati Shivaji. And the tactics that Shivaji deployed was that not only did he have these ships at sea, he also fortified all the coastal forts. And you must have heard about the fort of Vijayadurg, which was one of his major forts. And no battle was lost by Shivaji at sea, and no battle could conquer the Vijayadurg fort. So he had forts at Kolaba, he had forts at Vijayadurg, he had forts at Ratnagiri, he had forts at Sindhudurg, and all these were in the coastal areas. After Shivaji, Sambhaji took over, and also then the naval power continued. But one admiral actually comes to mind in the Maratha times, which was Kanoji Angre. Kanoji Angre was one of the famous battles in the Marathas, and he was another admiral who was never defeated by the British at sea as long as he was alive. So these are some of the glorious battles and the glorious heritage which became the basis for the Indian Navy. And as I mentioned earlier, we must also remember that India has had a great shipbuilding tradition. And as I've said, that when the Britishers arrived, they found a unique combination of the Malabar teak on the west coast of India and the shipbuilders of Gujarat. And with this combination, they started building ships commencing about 1735. Over the next 100 years, they built about 144 merchant vessels, 115 warships, including 84 gunships for the Royal Navy. Some of the most famous ships in the world were actually built by the British in India during that period. And HMS Trincomalee is one ship which comes to mind, which is one of the oldest ships afloat. And that was built in 1817 in Bombay docks. That ship is still afloat in UK at Hartlepool. And the second other famous battleship was that the Star Spangled Banner, which is the national anthem of the United States, was written on board HMS Minden by Francis Key in Baltimore. And that ship, HMS Minden, you'd be proud to learn, was built in India. The Treaty of Nanking was signed on board another famous warship, HMS Cornwallis, in August of 1842. And HMS Cornwallis was also built in India. Regrettably, when the transition took place from sail to steam and wood to steel, India got left behind because then we were not part of the Industrial Revolution. And the revival of our maritime capability and our Navy actually took place post-independence, when our leaders realized that to be secure on land, we need to be supreme at sea. And they also learned a very harsh lesson from history, that the neglect of our maritime frontiers, the neglect of the waters around us, had actually led to the loss of independence by India over centuries, but to the Portuguese and then to the British and the others. So this is so much for the background. Actually, the Indian Navy brought out a book titled Maritime Heritage of India. And this book is both in English and Hindi. This was released
could you please
by
lift it a
the
little up? Can you put it a little up? Yeah. Okay. Is it available on Amazon?
This book was actually released by the Honorable Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi, on the 7th of February 2016 during the International Fleet Review. This is the book in English, Maritime Heritage of India. It is also in Hindi, and the title there is Bharat Ki Samudri Virasat. And it is also online and it's available. And this covers the entire 5,000 years of India's glorious maritime heritage. Now, cutting on to what happened after independence, and that what you talked about, that, today we have a self-reliant Indian Navy, but it didn't just happen overnight, Amit. The first perspective plan of the Indian Navy was made in 1948, just 1 year after independence, where we talked about indigenous shipbuilding. We inducted naval architects into the Navy in 1955. We actually had our first naval war vessel built in Garden Reach Shipyard in Kolkata in 1961. It was the patrol boat INS Ajay. And we set up the Naval Design Directorate in 1964. So as you can see, that for more than 50 years now, the Indian naval designers have been designing, and our own shipyards have been building ships for the Indian Navy, resulting in, as you said, our transformation from a buyer's Navy to a builder's Navy. And today it's a matter of great pride that we have nearly 40 ships and submarines under construction in our own shipyards, both public and private. And these range from our aircraft carrier, Vikrant, which is under construction at Kochi shipyard. As you know, it's undergoing trials. We have frigates, destroyers, and submarines, both conventional and nuclear, under construction. But what is important to understand is that this tempo of indigenous construction must continue, because the Navy has made a maritime perspective plan, which is a 15-year perspective plan, which is capability based and mission dominated. We must make sure that funds are allocated to the Navy for indigenous construction, and we continue to build aircraft carriers. This is the first indigenous aircraft carrier. We need to have the second indigenous aircraft carrier coming out to meet the Navy's requirement of sea control. We need to have nuclear submarines as well as conventional submarines to meet the requirement of sea denial. The Navy today has a much, much greater role, not only in the Indian Ocean, but across the waters of the Indo-Pacific. And therefore, we need to make sure that it is a robust and a balanced Navy. We also need to make sure that we progressively increase the indigenous content, particularly in the field of weapons and sensors, where we are making radars, we're making sonars, guns, missiles, but we need to increase the indigenous content of our weapons and sensors so that future warships and submarines are all 100% made in India. And we need to also concentrate on the aviation sector by inducting fighters, aircraft, by the long-range maritime patrol and reconnaissance aircraft, the multi-role helicopters, the UAVs, or the drones as we call them. Another major area where we need to concentrate is to see that we induct cutting-edge technology in our weapons and sensors, concentrate on cyber warfare, because any war of the future is going to be an information warfare. We need to concentrate on space, because all the surveillance needs to be carried out in that. And we also need to look at artificial intelligence. So the Navy of the future will have to be a multi-dimensional networked force, actually a network-centric force, which is ready to take on any challenges in the waters of the Indian Ocean and across the waters of the Indo-Pacific. Challenges are increasing day by day, and the Navy will have a major role to play. And therefore, we need to make sure that we participate in activities such as the exercises with the Quad Navies, which is under the aegis of the Malabar series of exercises. We need to have a role to play to make sure that we counter the impact as well as the threats posed by countries such as China. And our Navy has to be a robust force which can take on. I would only like to say that the future Indian Navy will need to grow in all dimensions, because the maritime interests, the vast maritime interests of India, the responsibility of protecting these falls squarely on the men in white uniform, because it is the responsibility of the Navy, which is the manifestation of India's maritime military power, is to ensure that these maritime interests, which have a vital relationship with the nation's economic growth, are allowed to develop unhindered, both in peace and war.
This this being the 50th year of the Bangladesh war, the role played by the Indian Navy in that great victory, one of the greatest victories, as has been touted by most of your experts from the army. What would you have to say on that?
It must be understood that 1971 was a landmark year where the Navy assumed a different dimension and actually was in the forefront as far as hostilities are concerned. It is at that point in time that we actually came across what is always said, that two armies do not go to war, neither do two air forces or navies, but two nations go to war. So India went to war with Pakistan and then East Pakistan, and the armed forces, Army, Navy, and Air Force were united. The Navy made a major role, which was a very offensive role and a decisive role in its attack on Karachi. As you're aware, we had inducted these OSA missile boats from Russia, then Soviet Union at that point in time. And by a brilliant tactics that were deployed, these ships were towed by bigger ships because actually they did not have that many sea legs. They were towed to within the range, and they carried out a very bold attack on Karachi harbor on the 4th of December. And that is the reason why Navy Day is celebrated on 4th of December. And with that attack and that decisive attack on Karachi harbor, not only did we destroy some of the ships, we also destroyed the fuel tanks of Karachi harbor, a lot of damage. But it was an element, as you said, not mysterious, but an element of surprise. And nobody expected that the Indian Navy could do that. On the East Coast, we had deployed the aircraft carrier Vikrant, which flew these sorties. And thereafter, with the other people who were deployed on ground, particularly our commandos who were there, who worked together both in various places in Bangladesh to help in the operations and cripple actually the whatever Navy was there in East Pakistan there, and made the way for the army to carry out the surrender of the Bangladesh forces or the East Pakistan forces, which led to the creation of a nation, which is very, very rare, that the action of the military of another country has led to creation. So the Navy played a very decisive role, both in the Western as well as the Eastern sector in the 71 war.
You know, I was seeing this video that you sent me today itself. I have no qualms in admitting it because these are lovely pieces of art and pieces of documented, literature that we have in front of us through people like you. I mean, this 2016, I saw a tag that video says "United through Oceans." I mean, what does that mean actually?
So what happens is that once during the tenure of every president in India, we have what is called the Fleet Review. And only twice in the history of the Indian Navy since independence, we have had the International Fleet Review, where not only elements from the Indian Navy and the Merchant Navy and the Coast Guard have joined, but 15 navies, 50 navies of the world came together in Visakhapatnam in 2016 to strengthen bridges of friendship. And the underlying theme, as we said, that we may be separated by geography, but we are united through the oceans. We had over 100 ships at the Visakhapatnam anchorage. We had the President of India, then Shri Pranab Mukherjee. We had the Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi, and we had chiefs and senior officers from various navies of the world, various other dignitaries, and we had various events. Apart from the fleet review, we had an operational demonstration where nearly 3 million people were watching that from the shores. We had both our aircraft carriers, Virat and Vikramaditya. We had ships at anchorage carrying out the op demonstration. And that was a huge display of the cooperation between the navies. And as you said, united through oceans was the theme of that International Fleet Review.
We have so many great martyrs that we remember. We keep paying homage to them like Shahid Bhagat Singh, uh, Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, Chandrasekhar Azad, so many of them. Why don't we have such, uh, what do you call, popularity, or those great victories that have been achieved by these great former Navy men, Navy admirals, or the soldiers, without whom, I mean, probably the present would have been so different. The history was shaped by them. Because I myself personally, I am driving this beautiful thing along with friends like you, called 75 years of India's independence. But that 75 years of India's independence obviously had much more to it than what we know. Because if I ask somebody on the road, hardly anybody would be able to tell me about the things which are mentioned in that book, Maritime Heritage of India, that you just now showed to me. Kunjali, for example, where don't we have anything? What are the kind of things that have been done by the government in the last 75 years for these great Navy soldiers who saved India from foreign invasion for the last so many centuries?
So, it is actually true that, we somehow had not given so much importance to our maritime domain and particularly the naval issues in the past. The Navy, in its own stand, has not forgotten any of these. So we have INS Kunjali, which is an establishment in Bombay, named after the Kunjalis. We have an establishment in southern part of the country called INS Zamorin, which is after the Zamorins of Calicut. We have one of our major establishments in Bombay is called INS Angre, which is after the great Admiral Kanoji Angre. So we have kept the spirit alive, and as part of our naval heritage and tradition that is there. But I do agree with you that I think we need to create greater awareness about our maritime heritage and remember some of these great soldiers. But you must also remember one aspect, that India before independence was actually more than 500 kingdoms. And all these small, whether it's the Zamorins of Calicut, whether it's the Maratha Empire, these were all different kingdoms in different parts, and during a period where Chhatrapati Shivaji is known for his great achievements and his fight with the Mughals. But very few people understand that he was one of the great admirals who actually started a navy. So those kind of things, I agree with you, people need to be more aware. The Navy does its job. We haven't forgotten any of this. It is part of our maritime heritage. It is part of our naval heritage. But certainly something more could be done. And as is being done, at least, so much is being talked about the maritime domain in the past few years. So much has been done in terms of creating the awareness about the Indian Ocean. The Honorable Prime Minister's vision for Sagar, security and growth for all in the region, has put the focus into the maritime domain. So things are happening, but perhaps some of these forgotten or not so well remembered admirals of the past will also gain prominence, and people will start remembering them as well.
See, like when we have honors which are bestowed to soldiers who fight wars, who have fought wars. Navy, we don't hear much, but they play equally important role like the other two forces. Why is it so? Because the way that you operate is very different from what the territorial army or the army has to, or the air forces have to. So, a Paramveer Chakra or Mahavir Chakra or I understand this AVSM, Ati Vishishta Seva Medal, Param Vishishta Seva medals. This is being bestowed to great soldiers like you, General VK Singh. I understand. But what about the people who are coming up the ranks when they fight at the junior level, when they are coming up the ranks from RADM? Rear Admiral is a very senior post, I understand. I mean, almost equivalent to a Major General in the Army. Now, these kind of people, don't you think that we should also be felicitating more such Navy personnel who fought wars, even if it has to be done retrospectively in the next Republic Day or something like that?
In all fairness, I think that those who have carried out action, let us say all those who were part of the Operation Trident, Operation Python, in the 71 war, the commanding officers of these various missile boats, some sailors who were involved. As you know, Captain Mallah of INS Kukri was given the highest award. So I don't think that these people have been forgotten or not remembered or not been given the credit. It is just that Navy is a very small service, and the numbers are a few, and so therefore perhaps it gets glossed over. But I don't think the government always remembers them. The government always gives due credence to anybody who has done anything good in any war, in any conflict, in any operation. And whether it's a sailor or it's a soldier or an officer, everybody gets the due award. But I think it is the Navy is a small service. The Navy is also a silent service, and we operate out at sea, out away from the eye, and at times people may not be aware. But you're right that a lot is happening now to bring the thing to the focus. 71 war with its 50 years is being remembered. The Navy's role is being remembered. The president has just awarded the president's colors to the 22nd Missile Boat Squadron, Missile Vessel Squadron, which was actually the squadron which carried out the attack on Karachi. So this has just happened a day or two ago. And so therefore, the recognition is certainly there.
The government has been trying a lot of initiatives under Make in India to propel the Make in India and Atmanirbharta and self-reliance kind of slogans and motto of the Honorable Prime Minister for the growth of the nation. And defense is a sector which is being touted as the leader in that space. How critical a role will Navy be playing in the next 20 few years, if not 25 years, because we are going to be now looking at the 100th year of independence, and India's Navy, as India moves towards this numero uno position globally, along with superpowers like America and China, Germany and Britain, India's Navy should definitely be probably on the top of the charts. Now, what are the initiatives that you expect the government to help the Navy with to also, supplement the Make in India initiative, self-reliance initiative, Atmanirbharta initiative, as well as to ensure that India's Navy becomes the world's number one, not number three or number five?
Uh, you see, I would say that the finest example of Atmanirbharta and Swadeshi Karan, self-reliance and indigenization, can be found in the Indian Navy, even when we compare it with the other two armed forces. And as I mentioned to you, this is something that has happened over decades. And now, if you're asking what we need to do, what we need to do is that the Navy has made its plans, the maritime perspective plan, which is there of the Navy. This is a capability-based and a mission-dominated initiative. The tempo should not be brought down. Adequate funds need to be allocated for all the indigenous programs. What would they be specifically? Specifically, they would be that we need to make sure that the aircraft carrier project, because the current indigenous aircraft carrier, which is ready and undergoing trial, the next aircraft carrier, which has to be built again in the country, we need to make sure that that project goes through. We need to make sure that our speed of construction of frigates, destroyers, mine hunters is not stalled at all. We need to make sure that our submarine construction, both nuclear as well as conventional, continues. And more importantly, what we need to make sure is that we progressively increase the indigenous content. Currently, when we look at the float, move, and fight component, in the float component, we have, which is the hull, superstructure, etc., we have nearly 90% indigenization, because warship grade steel has been made by DRDO and is being actually manufactured by Steel Authority of India Limited. In the move component, we need to make sure that major turbines, major propulsion systems are made in India. because currently we are only have about 50 to 60% of indigenization level. And in the fight component, where we are making some radars, sonars, combat management systems, communication systems, electronic warfare systems, we need to increase the indigenous content of major weaponry, cutting edge technology, and make sure that future warships and submarines are 100% made in India. Then only we will be fully, as we can say, Atmanirbhar, and also look into the aspect of Swadeshikaran, self-reliance and indigenization. So this is the boost that the government will need to give, both by induction of cutting edge technology, whether it's in the area of artificial intelligence, whether it's in the cyber warfare, whether it's in the space technologies. All those will need to be done so that a future Navy is a multi-dimensional network centric Navy.
When we talk of private sector participation, do you patronize more and more private, because in the army, the private sector participation for their warfare equipments is increasing, like the bulletproof jackets and those kind of things are coming in place. We have in the airports, we have the jet makers who we are importing jets, we are importing from France and other places, which are primarily from private companies. We have companies, supplying to us in India. Would you like to recommend private sector participations, more aggressive involvement, or more opening up of the private sector for the Navy's Make in India initiatives?
As far as the Navy is concerned, the Navy was perhaps the first among the three services to open up the sector to private shipyards in terms of warship construction. But I would agree with you that we have a few private organizations such as L&T and others, but we could make sure that we have greater participation and a level playing field is provided to the private partners for construction of ships, submarines, helicopters, also in terms of the weapons and sensors. And this would be a public-private partnership where we may have to have the transfer of technology from the partners in other parts of the world. But certainly there is greater scope to see that there is greater private partnership, which leads to a healthy competition and also leads to make sure that what we are getting is cutting edge of technology and in time, without cost and time overruns. That's a very important part.
Afghanistan developments and the ramifications for India, and the danger lurks everywhere. 70% coastline, and we've already had 2611. Now Afghanistan, Middle East, China, India's navy's preparedness, and what are the areas we should be careful about from a foreign policy perspective with respect to navy.
Well, as you correctly brought out, we have a long coastline of 7,516 kilometers. We have an exclusive economic zone of over 2 million square kilometers, and nearly 90% of our trade by volume and 77% by value transits by sea. So this poses a huge problem for us as far as the security is concerned. And we have threats from the, as we say, the asymmetric threats, which are from non-state actors. And these range from maritime terrorism at sea, piracy at sea, arms trafficking, drug smuggling, human trafficking, and poaching in the fishing sector. So these are some of the challenges which the Navy has to take on. Yes, the current situation in Afghanistan only makes things complicated. The aggressive posture that China has taken in the South China Sea particularly, and also the fact that China's interests actually lie in the Indian Ocean, and they have been regularly deploying their anti-piracy escort force ever since 2008 in the Indian Ocean. And it is anticipated that not in the too distant future, their aircraft carrier may also start operating here. They already have submarines which get deployed in the Indian Ocean, both conventional and nuclear. So I think we have to make sure that the Indian Navy is capable of taking on all these challenges and threats. For that, we have to be a balanced force, which is capable. As I said, you need to have the carrier task force, the carrier battle groups. You need to have the submarines for sea denial, both conventional and nuclear. You need to have the forces which are there for your coastal and offshore security. You need to be able to operate at long distances to cover the Indian Ocean and the waters of the Indo-Pacific. As we are now a part of the Quad and the Quad navies, we need to make sure that the scope and content of the exercises that we do, whether it's the Malabar series of exercises, the Indira series of exercises with the Russians, the Konkan with the Royal Navy, for all that we need to make sure that we are not only trained professionally, the skills of our personnel are honed, but we also have the actual inventory in terms of ships, submarines, aircraft, and UAVs, which can then make us a powerful navy.
Admiral Saab, you've been through 4 decades with the Navy, and finally you debuted post as the Chief of the Naval Staff. You must have seen so many dispensations during your tenure as a great soldier. How would you? I would not say rate. This is not a circus or a joke that we are into, or in a lightweight discussion. On a serious note, I mean, as all of the issues that we are discussing, the 4 decades, India has had many changes in dispensations that you've also seen, right from your joining days, from your commissioning days, to finally retiring as the Admiral of the Army, including your handling of that great extradition thing and all that. So, how would you? What is your opinion about the various ways in which the political parties thought in India over the various changing, evolving times, and the roles that or the kind of support that you got from the various you saw coming from the various top posts, the Prime Minister's posts, including the current one, because you also served under the current dispensation in the part one of the government.
Yes. So without getting into the politics of the whole thing, I would like to say that in recent years, there have been a series of initiatives for sustainable development in the maritime domain. That's a very important aspect, that we are not just talking about the Navy, we are talking about the entire maritime domain, where there have been serious initiatives for sustainable development in the maritime domain, including the quest to harness the blue economy. There have been initiatives such as the vision of Sagar, which is security and growth for all in the region. We have seen how the Sagarmala project, which is a port-led development initiative based on 4 pillars of port modernization, connectivity, port-led industrialization, and coastal community development, how that has progressed, the development of our ports, the construction of our ports, all these result in making a stronger India. Because I firmly believe that the seas around us are gaining newfound importance as each day goes by. And I have no doubt that the current century is the century of the seas. And India has to emerge as a resurgent maritime nation. And what I can see around is that a lot of effort is going into the field, whether we talk about maritime security, whether we talk about issues that we need to have a rules-based international order at sea, whether it's the issue of from look east to the act east policy, whether it's the development of ports and harbors, whether it's the development of the islands, whether it's the issues related even to the fisheries sector, and also for harnessing the blue economy. And as you're aware that the umbrella for providing the security is that with the Navy and the Coast Guard, and a lot of effort is being made by the government to see that we have a potent and a capable Navy, which is the manifestation of India's maritime military power. And that is an important aspect to see as to how the government is working actually on all aspects of the maritime sector, so that because these maritime interests have a vital relationship with the nation's economic growth, and the security umbrella for all this can only be provided by the Navy. So it's an all-round growth and development that one is seeing in the past few years.
You led me to the final one or two questions or one or two interactions, because it's already past midnight there in Australia that they say, and it's your kindness that you've been, it's your sincerity towards nation building exercise that has made you give us time today, sir. Uh, your Navy is probably one that has to be very closely working not only with the defense ministry but also with ministries like port, shipping, waterways, and all those. If I understand a little bit, unlike the other two sister services that you have. So, what are the vagaries of that particular aspect that as a Navy chief you've had to face, and what are your suggestions to the government on that aspect or improvements?
We must remember that there are about 14, 4 different ministries and 22 agencies which operate in the maritime domain. So, we have, whether it's the Ministry for Oil and Natural Gas, the Environment Ministry, of course, the Finance Ministry, the Home Ministry, and so on. So if you count all those, it comes to about 14 ministries. So therefore, the suggestion is that we need to have, and also what happens is that, as you rightly said, there is need for coordination and integration between these various ministries so that we can move together in a cohesive and integrated manner in the maritime domain. So what has been suggested in the past that while each ministry has a role to play and will continue to play, we need to have an apex level organization for coordination and integration of the planning processes in the maritime domain. And particularly what has happened is that blue economy has emerged as a new paradigm, and harnessing of the blue economy, which actually means is the economic development of all our maritime interests, but by optimal deployment of the resources and for sustainable development of the oceans. So this, as you've seen, even, we had the COP26, and the climate change has created many problems. The oceans, which cover nearly 75% of the Earth's surface, are essential to life on Earth. The oceans are the suppliers of oxygen. They are the absorbers of carbon dioxide. They are actually, it's like a heat sink. And also, nearly 90% of the world's trade transits by sea. So therefore, we need to have an action plan drawn up for harnessing the blue economy. And if that needs to be done, that will need to be done by taking into account that we have sustainable development of the oceans, because this has also now been mandated by the Sustainable Development Goals. And we need to make sure that we do not pollute the seas and keep it clean. I had also suggested that the Honorable Prime Minister has launched a dynamic initiative of Swachh Bharat, and now Swachh Bharat 2.0. We need to extend that initiative to Swachh Sagar so that India can take the lead along with other countries in the region to ensure clean and healthy oceans for our future generations. So these are some of the suggestions which are there. so that we can actually emerge as a resurgent maritime nation and have a role to play in looking after the governance of the seas, aspects related to having a rules-based international order, talking about the countering the detrimental impact of climate change by leveraging the oceans. All these, India has to take the lead among the regions, countries of the region, and emerge as a resurgent maritime nation.
Till now, Admin Saab, till now, people have been joining courses like Navy. We keep seeing advertisements. Once in one my show, I show a lovely hoarding saying for the Air Forces, this is the only job that pays you for bringing the target down. In the case of the Air Forces, this is the only job that pays you for bringing the target down. So, like branding, creating more popularity, awareness to attract the best talent is very important as well. We keep, yes, Navy, we see a lot of advertisements on television as well, asking for it. But why haven't you guys, like, for example, we had a movie wherein top Bollywood stars, they play Navy chiefs, Navy soldiers. I'll name the movie. It's Rustam. Akshay Kumar starred in that movie. This guy's been doing so well. I mean, these kind of people, say Sunny Deol for, Border, there's the JP Datta movie, wherein we all fell in love with the army profession. These kind of things, really, why don't we use these big stars for as brand ambassadors to attract the best talents from this, right from the school days? Students should get motivated, kids should feel motivated, they should read more about Navy, read more about the army. Then, the best talent starts coming out. Uh, like Khetrapal, he left IIT. Arun Khetrapal left IIT. His brother was talking to me. He left IIT. He got an entrance. He cleared the IIT entrances. He left IIT and then he went for the NDA. But that kind of passion cannot be expected in today's times. So how do you inculcate such passion?
Well, I would like to say that the Navy offers an ocean of opportunities for a young individual, whether it's a boy or a girl. And our heroes are actually our own soldiers, sailors, the as well as the officers of the Indian Navy. And just as an example, you may have seen the 8-minute clip of the movie that you saw today, or the video that you saw today. And you may have noticed in that towards the end, when we were talking about the International Fleet Review, we also had a very catchy tune for Ahoy, Hello, Namaste, which was the theme song for the International Fleet Review. And all the people who starred in that video, this was a clip of 8 minutes. Normally, that video is for about half an hour. So we have our own people, actually, our own officers, our own sailors. They're the ones who are our heroes, and they're the ones who are there to motivate. Uh, we do not have a dearth of people, good people, wanting to join the armed forces, particularly the Navy. As you know, we have our own Naval Academy where the officers are given a BTech degree. I have been the commandant of the National Defense Academy, and I know that we get 100,000 applications and we choose only 300 out of that. So this is the best that the country has to offer. And so thereafter, once we get this talent from across the country, it is the job of the armed forces, it is the job of the Navy to train and give them and hone the skills. So yes, much more is being done, but I can assure you that there is no stone left unturned in trying to project the image of the Navy, in trying to approach various schools, colleges, the youngsters, naval NCC, etc., etc., to and take them on board ships to give them an experience at sea, so that the youngsters don't get attracted. And I have not come across a situation where we are not getting good people. I think we are getting excellent material, and we are turning them into excellent sailors and officers of the Indian Navy. And the pride that is there, I would rate, actually, I've seen navies across the world. I would rate our officers and sailors in the Navy among the best in the world. And I actually mean that. They are the most motivated, professionally sound, and willing to give their best and serve their Navy and the nation with honor and pride. And I always, whenever I have a chance to speak to youngsters, I always tell them that if you have the spirit of adventure in your heart, and if you would like to serve your country with pride and honor, then a career in the Indian Navy is the right career for you. So I think now we do our bit, and I'm sure that in the coming years we will get the best, even among the women officers who will be joining, who already have joined, and the men who will join, both as sailors and officers. We will see that they will serve the nation and the Navy with honor and pride and bring glory and keep the flag of the Indian Navy always flying high.
Admiral Dhawan, thank you so much. It was, you stayed back late in the night for us, but before we close the social, I had I'm going to be now discussing this with my entire Godlywood fraternity friends. There is this Yemen tragedy, Yemen extradition thing. General VK Singh and Admiral R. Dhawan both were instrumental along with the former late Foreign Minister, External Affairs Minister, Cabinet Minister Sushma Swaraj and VK Singh ji was obviously he was also Minister of State External Affairs that time. So both of you, and you were the Admiral of the Navy. So till that time, I only knew that VK Singh was involved with the ministry and all that. But when doing a show, I realized that you and VK Singh both had your own parts to play. So there is a movie coming up for sure now. Just now received a couple of messages from a few friends from the Bollywood saying how's it going with Admiral Dhawan on the Marakkar day. I said it's going great. And we look forward to a movie wherein VK Singh's part is played by Amir Khan. Both and Mr. Admiral Dhawan's role is played by Akshay Kumar. That is the kind of movie that I have in my mind now. We will look forward to a movie on those lines for the Yemen extradition. And your inputs will be valuable. And I really look forward to the entire young generation being grateful to people like you and VK Singh for what you've done for the country. And forever, this nation is going to be thankful to you, sir. Thank you. Look forward to meeting you again. Jai Hind, sir.
Jai Hind. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure and an honor.